A billionaire father sees a black waitress let his disabled son lead a dance step, and it changes her life forever. The silence that falls over Kingsley's, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, is so thick it seems to have weight. Conversation ceases. Cutlery freezes in midair, and dozens of eyes fix on the small space between the tables. Can you imagine a moment so powerful it stops an entire room? 10-year-old Lucas Montgomery is visibly shaking. His legs, trapped in metal braces, waver as he reaches out to Diana Johnson, the restaurant's only black waitress. The live piano has just begun a soft melody, and the boy's impulse to ask someone to dance comes without warning. "Sir, control your son," Manager Thornton's sharp voice cuts through the silence. "That's inappropriate. This is not a dance hall, and our employees are not here to entertain children." Richard Montgomery, owner of Montgomery Investments and one of the richest men in the country, swallows hard. It's the first time he's taken Lucas out to dinner in public since the accident that partially paralyzed his legs 2 years earlier, a mistake he would not repeat. "Lucas, sit down." The order comes low but firm. Diana remains motionless, her gaze shifting between the manager, the billionaire, and the boy whose hand is still hanging in the air. In her 5 years working there, she's learned to become invisible, especially to customers like Montgomery. "Mr. Thornton, I'm leaving. My shift is over." Her voice is calm as she removes her apron and places it on the tray. Then, to everyone's amazement, she smiles at Lucas and takes his hand. "I can't dance in an apron." Richard stands up abruptly. "What do you think you're doing?" Diana holds his gaze. "I'm accepting an invitation, sir." What happens next will leave you speechless. Before anyone can interfere, Lucas takes a hesitant step forward. His foot drags painfully across the floor, and the metal of his braces screeches. But Diana doesn't try to guide him or hurry him. She simply adjusts her pace to his. "She's getting fired tomorrow," a woman at the next table whispers. Richard watches, paralyzed. A sudden memory strikes him: Elizabeth, his late wife, dancing with Lucas in the living room. "It's not about perfection," she had said. "It's about connection." As Diana follows Lucas's clumsy steps, something in the boy's eyes changes. Fear gives way to intense concentration. Shame gives way to shy pride. For the first time since the accident, he isn't being guided, helped, or corrected. He's leading. "Mr. Montgomery," the manager's voice interrupts his thoughts. "I can assure you this will never happen again. She will be properly disciplined." Richard doesn't respond. The entire restaurant seems to wait for his reaction. After all, a man of his power could end anyone's career with a single word. Employees stop what they're doing. Other customers watch with morbid curiosity. Lucas's smile, however, is the only sound that echoes in his mind. Diana leads the boy back to the table after 3 dance steps. "Thank you for asking me out," she says formally, as if speaking to an adult. "It was an honor." When she turns to leave, Richard stops her. "Wait." His voice sounds different, almost unrecognizable to himself. "What's your full name?" "Diana Johnson, sir." Richard nods slowly. "Diana Johnson," he repeats, as if memorizing it. Then he takes a card from inside his jacket and holds it out to her. "My office. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. The entire restaurant holds its breath. Diana accepts the card without showing emotion, but her hand trembles slightly. "Dad," Lucas calls as she walks away. "Why did you do that?" The question hangs in the air like an accusation. Richard watches his son and, for a brief moment, sees not just the child Elizabeth left in his care, but a complete human being whose wants and needs he's systematically ignored for 2 years. As dinner proceeds in awkward silence, no one notices Diana's glance before she leaves, not out of fear or resignation, but out of a calm determination that contrasts with the storm brewing in Richard Montgomery's eyes. If this story about dignity and transformation is already touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Real Stories Diary to follow how a simple gesture of respect can spark a silent revolution capable of transforming lives forever. The lobby of Montgomery Tower sparkles with its glass and marble walls, reflecting the morning sunlight. Diana Johnson immediately feels out of place in her best outfit, a navy blue skirt and white blouse bought on sale. The people passing by wear clothes that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Diana Johnson to see Mr. Montgomery, she says to the receptionist, who examines her with a clinical gaze before making a call. 18th floor, Miss Winters will see you. In the elevator, Diana takes a deep breath, clutching her worn purse to her chest. It isn't fear she feels. It's a quiet determination that comes from having faced worse, much worse. Miss Winters, a woman in her 40s with a sharp gaze and impeccable posture, greets her. Mr. Montgomery is in a conference call. Please follow me. As they walk through the mirrored hallways, Diana feels the curious stares of employees. A black woman being escorted through the executive offices is rare enough to cause speculation. He had you fired, didn't he? Winters asks suddenly when they're alone in a waiting room. It happens. Powerful clients call, and people like you lose their jobs. People like me. You know what I mean? Winters adjusts her glasses. Employees who don't know their place. Diana smiles, not amused. And where exactly would that be? Before Winters can answer, her phone rings. He'll see you now. Richard Montgomery's office takes up half the floor. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan looks like a distant playground. The man stands, gazing out at the city as if it were his personal property. Mr. Montgomery, Diana greets him formally. Richard turns, his face a mask of studied control. Miss Johnson, thank you for coming. He points to a chair. Please. The silence that follows is calculated, a tactic Diana recognizes immediately. It's the kind of silence designed to make nervous people talk too much, incriminate themselves. Do you have a background? Richard finally asks. Excuse me? Education, college. Diana keeps her gaze steady. Bachelor's degree in child development from NYU. Incomplete master's degree in special education. Something flashes across Richard's face. Surprise, perhaps. And you work as a waitress. I work 3 jobs, actually. The restaurant, a bookstore on weekends, and as a tutor when I can get students. Richard moves to her table, picking up a folder. I did some research on you, Miss Johnson. I wanted to understand who the person was who, he hesitates, danced with my son. He opens the folder, revealing printed photos of a community center. Freedom Steps. You founded that 6 years ago. Diana sits up straighter in her chair. I co-founded it with my sister, Zoe. A dance program for children with physical disabilities. Richard leafs through some documents. Which is now about to close due to lack of funding. Diana shows no surprise. Of course, he would find all that out in less than 24 hours. I didn't come here to ask you for money, Mr. Montgomery. Then why did you come? Because you invited me. Richard laughs softly, a joyless sound. Fair enough. He stands up again, restless. I want you to work for me. Diana blinks, genuinely taken aback. As a waitress in your house? Richard's face hardens. As a therapeutic companion for Lucas. His son's name seems difficult for him to say. Diana notices how his eyes momentarily drift to a photo on the table, a smiling woman holding a baby. I have the best specialists in the country, Richard continues. Physical therapists, neurologists, psychologists. But what you did yesterday, he pauses, as if the words betray him. It was just a dance, Mr. Montgomery. It was the first time I've seen him smile since the accident. The admission is painful. I don't want a dancer for my son. I want someone who can do what you did. Follow, not lead. Diana studies the man in front of her. Beneath the facade of power and control, she sees what others might not, a desperate, lost father. I can pay you 5 times what you're making now. Diana stands up. No. Richard looks shocked, like someone unaccustomed to hearing that word. I don't work for people who see only my color or my social class before they see my competence, she explains calmly. And I definitely don't work for people who try to buy solutions to emotional problems. Richard's face flushes. You're turning down an offer that would solve your financial problems out of pride? Out of dignity, Diana corrects. And because your son deserves more than someone hired to pretend to care. She walks to the door, then pauses. Lucas doesn't need more experts. He needs space to lead his own life. You don't know my son. No, Diana agrees. But I know people like him. People whose physical limitations are nothing compared to the invisible cages we build around them. She takes a card from her purse and places it on the table. Freedom Steps classes, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 p.m. If you'd like to bring Lucas, the first class is free. As Diana leaves, she passes Winters, who has obviously been listening behind the door. You just turned down an offer from Richard Montgomery, she whispers incredulously. Are you crazy? Diana smiles. Maybe, but I'd rather be crazy than be property. The following Wednesday, Diana is at the reception desk of the community center when Zoe, her sister and co-founder of the project, comes running up. There's a Bentley parked outside, she whispers, nervously adjusting her hijab. And you won't believe who's inside. Through the window, Diana sees the luxurious car. Lucas is in the back seat, looking anxiously out the window. Richard remains in the driver's seat, his hands still on the steering wheel, as if fighting an internal battle. He's not coming in, Zoe predicts. Men like him don't come to places like this. Diana smiles, remembering Lucas's gaze during those brief moments of dancing. Don't underestimate the power of a determined son. As they watch, the car door opens. Lucas gets out slowly, adjusting his gadgets. Then, to everyone's surprise, Richard gets out, too. The billionaire looks out of place in his casual pants and sweater, an obvious attempt to dress less formally, but still screaming privilege. I told you he'd come, Diana murmurs, more to herself. Zoe stares at her. What did you do? Diana doesn't answer, but her eyes sparkle with a secret that not even her sister fully knows. In her tiny apartment in the Bronx, hidden under her bed, is a family's a notebook filled with notes about children like Lucas and men like Richard Montgomery. Years of observation, research, and a plan that had begun with a simple acceptance of an invitation to dance. What Richard Montgomery doesn't know, what he can't imagine in his world of glass towers and endless bank accounts, is that Diana Johnson isn't just a waitress who agreed to dance with his son. She's a woman with a mission. And his empire of isolation and privilege is about to face its greatest challenge, the simple truth that some of the greatest lessons in life cannot be bought. They must be lived. Freedom Steps operates out of an old community warehouse. Handmade posters decorate the walls with phrases like your rhythm, your rules, and every move counts. When Richard and Lucas enter, children with various types of mobility devices practice free movements to the sound of a light beat. Mr. Montgomery, Diana approaches, wearing simple clothes with the program logo. Welcome. Lucas watches the children in awe. A girl in a wheelchair spins in precise circles, while a boy with a prosthetic leg creates a sequence of steps. It looks chaotic, Richard comments, visibly uncomfortable. There's structure, Diana replies. It's just not the one you recognize. She turns to Lucas. Would you like to join in? The boy nods enthusiastically but looks at his father, hesitant. Go on, Richard says tensely. I'll be right here. As Diana guides Lucas to the group, Zoe approaches Richard and offers him a chair. The first day is always the hardest, she comments. For the parents, not the kids. This isn't therapy, Richard argues. I hired the best rehabilitation specialists. And how's that been working for Lucas? Zoe asks gently. The studio door opens. An older woman enters, leaning on an ornate cane. She has gray hair in elegant braids and a commanding presence. Dr. Elaine Mercer, Zoe whispers. Neuroscientist specializing in brain plasticity. Retired from Harvard. The woman greets several children before noticing Richard. "Mr. Montgomery, you've rejected my research proposal 3 times in the last 2 years." "Dr. Mercer, I didn't expect to see you here. I oversee the research program," she explains. "We're studying how non-directive approaches to movement affect neural reconfiguration in children with motor challenges." "Research," Richard frowns. "I thought this was just a community dance class." Diana returns, leaving Lucas exploring movements with another child. "Freedom Steps is a pilot motor rehabilitation program based on the theory of movement autonomy," she explains. "We integrate adaptive dance with neuroscientific principles." "Why do you work as a waitress if you lead a research program?" "Because we don't have adequate funding yet, and because people like you rejected us 3 times." The penny drops. "You were Dr. Mercer's assistant on the proposals." Co-author, Dr. Mercer corrects. Diana has an incomplete master's degree because she had to leave college to take care of her sister, but her theoretical work is groundbreaking. "You knew who I was at the restaurant," Richard concludes. "From the moment you walked in," Diana confirms. "And when Lucas got up to dance, I recognized the opportunity to show, not tell." "Was it staged, the dance?" "Absolutely not. Lucas chose to get up. I chose to follow." A group of reporters enters the studio. Richard immediately tenses. "What's this?" "Part 2 of the plan," Diana smiles slightly. Zoe shows Richard a newly published article, "Revolutionary Motor Rehabilitation Methodology Shows Promising Results." "We published our first results today," Dr. Mercer explains. "And we invited the press." "You used my son for a public relations stunt." Richard's voice is pure ice. Diana leads him into a side room where photos of dozens of children adorn the walls, each with handwritten progress statistics. On the last wall is an empty frame. "What's that?" he asks. "Our future. The full rehabilitation center we could build if we had the resources. 500 children a year instead of 50. "You orchestrated all this," Richard mutters. "The dance, the meeting, bringing me here on press day. I saw an opportunity and took it. 4 months ago, when you canceled our meeting without reading the proposal, I promised myself I'd find a way." "Diana," Zoe interrupts. "It's Lucas." They rush back. Lucas is in the center of the room, surrounded by other children. Someone has turned off the music, and everyone watches in silence. The boy has removed one of his braces and is trying to balance on just one support. "Lucas!" Richard starts forward, but Diana stops him. "Wait," she whispers. "Watch." Lucas takes a deep breath, focuses. Then, to everyone's amazement, especially his father's, he takes a complete step without full support. It's small, shaky, but entirely his. The children cheer. Camera flashes go off. Richard's face, usually composed and unreadable, is now exposed, with unshed tears glistening in his eyes. "That's why we created Freedom Steps," Diana says softly. "It's not about perfect steps. It's about first steps on your own." Richard watches his son, not as a problem to be managed, but as a complete person discovering his own strength. "This could have been done without manipulating me," he says finally. "It could have been if you had answered our calls or read our proposals 3 times." The reporters notice Richard. A murmur grows as Lucas, oblivious to the tension, continues practicing his new step with an expression of pure concentration. Richard Montgomery is cornered. Before him lie 2 options: withdraw in anger, confirming to the press his reputation as cold and calculating, or embrace the moment his son has created. Between the power he's always wielded and the freedom his son needs, Richard finds himself in unfamiliar territory, one where neither his money nor his influence defines the next step. His gaze shifts between his smiling son and the reporters waiting for his reaction. Humility is not a virtue in his vocabulary, but as he sees the transformation on Lucas's face, something inside him begins to break. The orchestra of power and privilege he's accustomed to now plays a different tune, and he has to decide, will he continue conducting, or will he learn to follow? Richard Montgomery faces the reporters waiting for his reaction. His son has just taken a step on his own in front of the cameras, and Diana Johnson has skillfully led him to this impossible moment. Mr. Montgomery, a reporter approaches, could you comment on your presence at Freedom Steps today? Is it true that your foundation rejected funding this program 3 times? Richard glances at Lucas, who is still practicing his new step, oblivious to the political tension. Then, to everyone's surprise, especially Diana's, he smiles. You know what's hardest for someone in my position? Richard addresses the reporter but speaks loudly enough for everyone to hear. Admitting when we're wrong. A stunned silence fills the room. The Montgomery Foundation is pleased to announce a commitment to fully fund Freedom Steps for the next 5 years and to build a permanent rehabilitation center based on the methodology developed by Dr. Mercer and Ms. Johnson. Camera flashes explode. Zoe lets out a cry of surprise. On one condition, he adds, watching Diana tense up, that Ms. Johnson retain complete autonomy over the program and its methodology. No corporate interference. 3 months later, bulldozers are clearing the ground for the new Freedom Steps Rehabilitation Center. The project isn't the most luxurious the Montgomery Foundation has ever funded, but it's the most innovative, with every space designed with direct input from the children and their families. Diana supervises the construction frequently, but never alone. Lucas shows up regularly, sometimes bringing other children with him. And to the staff's continued surprise, Richard Montgomery also shows up, silently observing the progress. I never thought you'd actually show up at board meetings, Diana comments one afternoon as they review the plans. I never thought I'd have to study neuroplasticity at 50, Richard replies, rubbing his tired eyes. In front of him is a scientific article marked with post-it notes. But here we are. Diana looks at the man curiously. Is this part of your public penance, or do you really care? Lucas asked to have his second brace removed last week. I know. He told me. His previous physical therapist said that would be impossible for at least 2 years. Diana smiles. But you fired her, remember? Because you told me she was wrong. And she was. Diana points to a photo of Lucas balancing with only one crutch. He's progressing faster than any traditional medical prediction. Why did you never accept my apology? Richard asks suddenly. Because you never apologized. You redirected resources, changed policies, funded our program. That's not an apology, it's compensation. Richard nods slowly. Fair again. At the opening ceremony 6 months later, the contrast with that night in the restaurant couldn't be greater. The huge adaptive space is filled with children with various types of mobility devices, all moving freely. In the center of the main hall, Lucas, now wearing only a lightweight brace on his left leg, leads a small choreographed routine with 3 other children. His movements are still limited, but they flow with a confidence no doctor had predicted. Richard watches from a distance, not interfering. He doesn't need you to hold him anymore, Diana says, approaching quietly. No, Richard agrees. But he still needs me to be around. Crucial difference. Richard turns to face her. Thank you, he says simply. For what, exactly? For teaching me to follow. A reporter approaches. Mr. Montgomery, how does it feel to see your son's progress? Richard looks at Lucas, who is now helping a younger girl find her balance. Proud. Not of what he's overcome, but of what he's created for others. And what's been the biggest lesson you've learned on this journey? Richard Montgomery, the man once known only for his financial empire, looks directly into the camera. That true leaders aren't those who guide others down the path they believe is right, but those who have the courage to follow when someone shows them a better way. A year later, the Freedom Steps program expands to 3 new cities. Diana receives the Pediatric Rehabilitation Innovation Award, and her methodology begins to be implemented in hospitals across the country. Lucas, now using only a light cane on difficult days, enrolls in regular school and becomes a youth spokesperson for the program, inspiring other children to find their own pace. And Richard learns the hardest and most valuable lesson of all, that true power does not lie in controlling every move, but in knowing when it's time to take a step back and let others lead the way. In a world where powerful people rarely change their perspectives, and where those without power often remain in the shadows, the story of Richard, Diana, and Lucas reminds us that true transformation occurs when we cross the invisible boundaries that separate us. When a billionaire learns from a waitress, when a father follows in his son's footsteps. If this story about how a simple gesture of dignity changed lives forever touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to Real Stories Diary, because we believe that the most profound revolutions don't start with grand manifestos or billion-dollar fortunes. They start when someone has the courage to take an authentic first step, and someone else has the wisdom to follow.